Hi, welcome to the Cosmic Busker. My name is Bobby Cody. This is the complete Pentagon UAP or UFO report. For those of you who don't know, Pentagon had planned on releasing their own UFO or UAP. UAP is now the military's terminology for UFOs. UAP, it stands for, as we can see here, Unidentified Aerial Phenomena. The report was initially supposed to be released on June 1st of this year. That was my birthday, so I was looking forward to my little birthday present, but they put it off until June 25th, which, as of this recording, that would have been yesterday. So I want to go over the report in completion. And as we read through the report, I just want to add and elucidate on some aspects of the report and talk about it and what it means within the bigger scope. So let's take a look right now. As you can see, it comes from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, Preliminary Assessment on Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, 25th of June, 2021. First we're going to go through the scope and assumptions that the report makes. This preliminary report is provided by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence in response to the provision in Senate Report 116-233 accompanying the Intelligence Authorization Act for fiscal year 2021 that the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, in consultation with the Secretary of Defense, is to submit an intelligence report of the threat posed by unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs, and the progress the Department of Defense Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon Task Force, UAPTF, has made in understanding this threat. This report provides an overview for policymakers of the challenges associated with characterizing the potential threat posed by UAP, while also providing means to develop relevant processes, policies, technologies, and training for the U.S. military and other U.S. government personnel if and when they encounter UAPs, so as to enhance the intelligence community's ability to understand the threat. The Director, UAPTF, is the accountable official for ensuring the timely collection and consolidation of data on UAP. The data set described in this report is currently limited primarily to U.S. government reporting of incidents occurring from November 2004 to March 2021. Data continues to be collected and analyzed. I just want to talk about here where they state the ability to understand the threat. It's hard to describe UFOs or UAPs as they describe them as a threat. Given the characteristics and the high level of technology these UFOs or UAPs have displayed, one has to think that they could literally run circles around our military if they wanted to. There have been several incidences where I've seen one where during the Vietnam War where they encountered UFOs and they started shooting at the UFOs. The ones who shot at the UFOs, or our boys who shot at the UFOs, got wiped out. And why did they get wiped out? Not because the UFOs were shooting back at them. Ironically, what this documentary that I saw stated was that the UFOs weren't shooting at our boys. They were just redirecting our own weapons back at us. So our boys were essentially killing themselves. I think that's a rather zen way for any UFOs to approach the situation. We are a threat to ourselves more than these UFOs are a threat to humankind. Another aspect of this that the military would consider a threat, and I'm going to throw up some links to Stephen Greer. Stephen Greer in 2001 did a press conference where he had several military people and people associated with the military contractors get up and testify as to their experience with UFOs. And one who was a gentleman who was in the missile silos, our nuclear missile silos, talked about how UFOs showed up and they turned off all of our nuclear missiles. Every single one of them. If they were a threat, they could take advantage of that. It's hard to describe the UFOs as a threat. It's understandable why the military sees them a threat, because they can turn off our nuclear missiles. But to my knowledge, they have performed no aggressive acts on our military. So while it's understandable to why they consider the UFOs or UAPs a threat, look, if they wanted to, they probably could have wiped us out a long time ago. And there's reasons why they may not have done that. We may be owned by them. And if you own something, you wipe it out only when it becomes of no use to you or a hindrance to you. Let's continue. ODNI prepared this report for the Congressional Intelligence and Armed Service Committees. UAPTF and ODNI Intelligence for Aviation drafted this report with input. They talk about all the input that this came from the U.S. Air Force, Army, Navy, DARPA, FAA, NOAA as National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, that would be. So let's move on. Assumptions. Various forms of sensors that register UAP generally operate correctly and capture enough real data to allow initial assessments that some UAP may be attributable to sensor anomalies. Let's continue. So generally speaking, what they're saying there is, almost certainly all of this is real. A small number may be glitches in our radar and our sensors. But for the most part, this is real. So let's continue. Executive summary of the report states that the limited amount of high-quality reporting on unidentified aerial phenomena hampers our ability to draw firm conclusions about the nature or intent of UAP. Anybody who's been studying UFOs and UFO phenomena for decades, like myself, knows that that is malarkey, complete junk. There is an abundance of high-quality reporting on the unidentified aerial phenomena or UFO phenomenon. Abundance of it. And again, I would point to the Stephen Greer press conference of 2001. I've already put up a link to it. I'm going to probably link to it in the description as well, so you can see that, all of the information and all the testimony, including nuclear missile silos being completely made inoperable by UFOs, none of this is covered in this report, which tells you that it's not that there's a limited amount of high quality reporting. It's that this report completely ignores it. But again, this is a great jumping off point to learn more about not only the military's mindset in this regard, but it's a jumping off point to talk more about the UFO phenomenon. So let's continue. The Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force considered a range of information on UAP described in U.S. military and IC or intelligence community reporting. But because the reporting lacks sufficient specificity, ultimately recognized that a unique tailored reporting process was required to provide sufficient data for analysis of UAP events. As a result, the UAPTF concentrated its review on reports that occurred between 2004 and 2021, the majority of which are a result of this new tailored process to better capture UAP events through formalized reporting. Let's talk about that. real quick. Previous to this new formalized reporting, anybody in the military who saw UFOs or something unusual, they knew not to report it. Because if they did report it, according to testimony I've seen, they would be threatened, they would be silenced, they would be told, shut up, don't say anything, and it would potentially ruin their career. People would say, oh, they're crazy, they saw a UFO, you can't believe anything they say or see. So there was literally no reporting on it. Military knew, you see anything like that, just ignore it. Shut up, don't say anything. Now with this new formalized reporting, they're able to acquire information because they said, hey guys, we don't think you're crazy. We're not going to punish you. We're not going to destroy your career if you see this stuff. Please report it. We'll continue. Most of the UAP reported probably do represent physical objects, given that a majority of UAP were registered across multiple sensors to include radar, infrared, electro-optical, weapon seekers, and visual observation. So, again, these are definitely real physical objects. They're not, they're nothing that these military are reporting. They're actual physical objects that are being seen. In a number of incidents, UAP reportedly appeared to exhibit unusual flight characteristics. These observations could be the result of sensor errors, spoofing, or observer misperception and require additional rigorous analysis. Those unusual flight characteristics are essentially, they're violating the known law of physics. There's the example of the Tic Tac UFO. I'll throw up a link again up in the upper right-hand corners. You guys can take a look if you want at the Tic Tac UFO. If you're not familiar with it, most people already are. That Tic Tac UFO would be going zoom one, it would be going straight, and then boom, it would make a right-angle turn at unbelievable speeds. A right-angle turn at these incredible speeds in any aircraft operating under the known law of physics would smash the people inside against the wall. And at those speeds would kill them. They wouldn't be able to survive. And anything loose inside of the craft that made such a right angle turn at those speeds would be smashed against the wall. So that's what they're talking about when they, generally speaking, when they talk about exhibiting unusual flight characteristics. Now, we say it violates the known laws of physics, but there are ways that this could happen, and that an object would be able to make those right angle turns at that speed, and that's if it essentially had its own internal gravity. If it was isolated from the gravitics around it and it had its own internal gravity and was isolated from the gravitational effects outside of it, then that could potentially be possible. And given all of the flight characteristics we tend to see in UFOs reported for decades, that tends to be the thinking of most UFO investigators, is that these things have their own internal gravity, and it seems like it's almost like they're operating within their own internal universe inside these crafts, these UFOs. So let's continue. We're going to continue right here. There are probably multiple types of UAP requiring different explanations based on the range of appearances and behaviors described in the available reporting. Our analysis of the data supports the construct that if and when individual UAP incidents are resolved, they will fall into one of 5 potential explanatory categories: airborne clutter, natural atmospheric phenomena, U.S. government or U.S. industry developmental programs, foreign adversary systems, and the catch-all other bin. Again, this is very funny because that catch-all other bin is the aliens or some other, people from another planet or some other highly intelligent species, perhaps even living with us on Earth underneath the ocean. A lot of UFOs and a lot of UFO reporters have stated that we actually have more evidence of UFOs coming out of the ocean than we do coming out of the sky. And they think that, in fact, there might be UFO bases in the oceans of our planet. The fact is that the oceans of our planet are less explored than the moon is. We know more about the moon than we do about our own oceans, in particular the bottom, the surface of the oceans. So it certainly is conceivable. And I've also seen there's remote viewers, Farsight Institute. They did one particular remote viewing view where they actually went underneath the oceans and they found what appears to be some kind of city underneath, not only underneath the ocean, but underneath the surface. So if you go to the bottom of the ocean, it's not in the bottom of the ocean, it's actually underneath the bottom of the ocean. So you'd have to dig up the soil at the bottom of the ocean and dig underneath there to find this city existing way underneath there. So let's continue. UAP clearly pose a safety of flight issue and may pose a challenge to U.S. national security. Safety concerns primarily center on aviators contending with an increasingly cluttered air domain. UAP would also represent a national security challenge if they are foreign adversary collection platforms who provide evidence a potential adversary has developed either a breakthrough or disruptive technology. I just want to talk about that real quick. It's almost certain that these aren't foreign adversaries. It's not China, it's not Russia, it's not Japan, it's none of these. Almost certainly why I have, and others are of this opinion, is because this has been going on since World War II. Some of you may be familiar with the band the Foo Fighters. The name of the band Foo Fighters comes from lights that were seen during World War II. These lights, or these aerial phenomenon, would follow military pilots. And they wouldn't just follow military pilots. During World War II, they would lock on, literally right next to a military plane, and they would stay like maybe 10, 15 feet away from the plane, and no matter what movements the pilot would make to try to shake that light, it would stay right there like it was glued on 15 feet away from the plane, and they couldn't get rid of these lights. They ultimately became known as Foo Fighters during World War II, and that's where the band gets its name. So let's continue. Consistent consolidation of reports from across the federal government, standardized reporting, increased collection and analysis, and a streamlined process for screening all such reports against a broad range of relevant U.S. government data will allow for a more sophisticated analysis of UAP that is likely to deepen our understanding. Some of these steps are resource intensive and will require additional investment. Let's continue on to the next page. I'm going to take a little sip of water real quick. Now, here it says available reporting largely inconclusive. Limited data leave most UAP unexplained. Limited data and inconsistency in reporting are key challenges to evaluating UAP. No standardized reporting mechanism existed until the Navy established one in March 2019. The Air Force subsequently adopted that mechanism in November 2020, but remains limited to U.S. government reporting. The UAPTF regularly heard anecdotally during its research about other observations that occurred, but which were never captured in formal or informal reporting by those observers. After carefully considering this information, the UAPTF focused on reports that involved UAP largely witnessed firsthand by military aviators and that were collected from systems we considered to be reliable. These reports describe incidents that occurred between 2004 and 2021, with the majority coming in the last 2 years as the new reporting mechanism became better known to the military aviation community, and they weren't afraid to announce it, and they knew that their careers wouldn't be destroyed any longer. We were able to identify one reported UAP with high confidence. In that case, we identified the object as a large deflating balloon. Others remain unexplained. So one of them was a large deflating balloon. All the rest are unexplained. 144 reports originated from U.S. government sources. Of these, 80 reports involved observation with multiple sensors. Most reports describe UAP as objects that interrupted pre-planned training or other military activity. I just want to state that that seems to be one of the consistent things with UFOs. In particular, they appear to, they want to shut down our nuclear missile silos, and they are frequently interrupting our military exercises. And it appears like they're almost like they're saying, hey, we can run circles around you guys, watch, and there's nothing you can do about it. Let's continue. UAP Collection Challenges. Sociocultural stigmas and sensor limitations remain obstacles to collecting data on UAP. Although some technical challenges, such as how to appropriately filter out radar clutter to ensure safety of flight for military and civilian aircraft, are long-standing in the aviation community, while others are unique to the UAP problem set. I want to stop and talk about this real quick. We're going to talk about technical challenges, such as how to appropriately filter out radar clutter to ensure safety of flight for military and civilian aircraft. The fact is that the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, to my knowledge, ever since the early 1980s, their radar systems have particularly been programmed to filter out radar clutter. So that if there's a pilot, there's a civilian pilot, and he's flying, he's got 100 passengers in his plane. He's flying from Newark Airport to some airport in Los Angeles, and he's flying, and he sees a UFO, and he contacts FAA and says, "Hey, I got a bogey on here." And bogey is, generally speaking, my understanding of what they call anything that they don't know what it is. They call it a bogey. So he sees a UFO, "Hey, I got a bogey here." And he contacts the FAA, and the radar administrator of the FAA is looking at his radar. He doesn't see anything. Why doesn't he see anything? Because ever since the 80s, they do filter out radar clutter. So UFOs don't show up on the civilian FAA radar screens. Certain it's different on the military ones, because the military, they want to see everything, no matter, because then how you make the differentiation between what's an enemy aircraft and what's not supposed to be there. For the FAA, they don't want the FAA to know if there's enemy aircraft there anyway. They'd rather the FAA, the civilian administration, not know all that stuff. So they filter it out. Any UFOs the FAA isn't going to see, is my understanding. So let's continue. Narratives from aviators in the operation community and analysts from the military and IC describe disparagement associated with observing UAP, reporting it, or attempting to discuss it with colleagues, as I've stated before. Although the effects of these stigmas have lessened as senior members of scientific, policy, military, and intelligence communities engage on the topic seriously in public, reputational risk may keep many observers silent, complicating scientific pursuit of the topic. I just want to talk about that real quick. Narratives from aviators describe disparagement associated with observing UFOs or UAP. That has generally been, as I stated earlier in this video, that has definitely been an issue because people make fun. Those pilots who are confident in who they are and really have a good sense of self and have the respect of their colleagues, those are the ones who have no problem standing up. And I'll give you an example. I used to work down at the Hampton Inn outside of Atlantic City, just outside of Atlantic City on Route 30 or Route 40. I always confuse the two. But at the Hampton Inn, there were a couple airlines that would regularly, they had a contract with our hotel, and they would regularly stay at our hotel. So I regularly had pilots and stewardesses coming into the hotel, and I was a front desk person. And I'll never forget, one of the most competent, highly respected pilots at the airline that stayed there, I was talking right in front of, he was there, he had his whole crew there, stewardesses, his assistant co-pilot, and he right out flat says, yeah, oh yeah, I've seen UFOs. Most pilots have seen UFOs. There's no question there's something going on there. He had no problem stating it. But that's because he was highly respected and he had a lot of self-confidence and he didn't care what other people felt. Other people are a lot more skeptical or hesitant, I should say, to make these claims because they fear for their reputation. So let's continue. The sensors mounted on U.S. military platforms are typically designed to fulfill specific missions. As a result, those sensors are not generally suited for identifying UAP. Sensor vantage points and the numbers of sensors concurrently observing an object play substantial roles in distinguishing UAP from known objects and determining whether UAP demonstrates breakthrough aerospace capabilities. Optical sensors have the benefit of providing some insight into relative size, shape, and structure. Radio frequency sensors provide more accurate velocity and range information. Let's go on to the next page. Some potential patterns do emerge. Let's see what those patterns are. Although there is wide variability in the reports and the data set is currently too limited to allow for detailed trend or pattern analysis, there was some clustering of UAP observations regarding shape, size, and particularly propulsion. UAP sightings also tended to cluster around U.S. training and testing grounds, but we assess that this may result from a collection bias as a result of focused attention, greater numbers of latest generation sensors operating in those areas, unit expectations, and guidance to report anomalies. And that's what I was stating before, where the sightings tend to cluster around U.S. training and testing grounds. Honestly, based on my understanding of the UFO phenomena over decades, that's not a matter of a collection bias. When they're showing up and they're turning off nuclear missile silos, that's a heck of a lot more. It's imperative that we understand that they're telling us, hey, look at what we can do. These nuclear missile silos are useless. We can turn these off. We can run circles around you. And they're showing this on a regular basis to our U.S. military government. And that's why they earlier stated it was a threat. So let's move on. And a handful of UAP appear to demonstrate advanced technology. And 18 incidents were described in 21 reports. Observers reported unusual UAP movement pattern or flight characteristics. Some UAP appear to remain stationary in winds aloft, move against the wind, maneuver abruptly, or move at considerable speed without discernible means of propulsion. In a small number of cases, military aircraft systems processed radio frequency energy associated with UAP sightings. The UAPTF hold a small amount of data that appear to show UAP demonstrating acceleration or a degree of signature management. Additional rigorous analysis are necessary by multiple teams or groups of technical experts to determine the nature and validity of these data. We are conducting further analysis to determine if breakthrough technologies were demonstrated. I want to talk real quick about, I'm going to give a link above in the upper right-hand corner so you can take a look. But they talk about here, maneuver conservative without discernible means of propulsion. All propulsion that all of our aircraft at this point operates on the basis of shooting something out the back of the aircraft that's going to propel you forward. That's the way jet planes work. That's the way rockets work. It's a very basic means of propulsion, and it's the only form of propulsion of aviation that we currently know. Trying to remember the gentleman's name, Roberts. I can't remember his name at the moment, but he's very famous. I'm going to throw up a link to him. His first name is Robert, and I can't remember his last name at the moment. But he came out a couple decades ago, claimed to have worked at Area 51, and he talks about this propulsion. He claims that he worked on a UFO, and he claims that these crafts actually tap into the universe's energy. How to describe this? Essentially, there's untapped energy in the smallest little aspect of the universe. It appears that our world is a hologram, is what we're beginning to find out. And that one of the aspects of a hologram, or is likened to a hologram in many ways, may not actually be a hologram, but that is one of the best metaphors that we can use to describe the universe in which we live. And one of the aspects of a hologram is that if you chop a hologram up in half, in quarters, in eighths, into little pieces, and then you just have a little tiny piece of that hologram, within that little tiny piece of the hologram, you still have all of the information of the entire hologram. So that no matter how small you cut that hologram up, it is still possible to recreate the entire hologram. And that's what I'm trying to get at. When we talk about, we believe that the universe is a hologram, or is likened to the characteristics of a hologram, that means that in one little tiny small area of space, in just a little tiny atom molecule, the smallest little piece of the universe possible, exists all the energy of the universe. And it's that energy that it is hypothesized that these UFOs are tapping into. So when they talk about without a discernible means of propulsion, there are many, including myself, who believe that that is what they're tapping into. I wish I could remember the proper name for it, so I can give it to you, but unfortunately I do these off the top of my head, so I'm not able to get the proper name for them. My apologies to you. Let's continue. Let's see. UAPT holds a small amount of data that appear to show UAP demonstrating acceleration or a degree of signature management. Additional rigorous analysis are necessary by multiple teams or groups of technical experts to determine the nature and validity of these data. We're conducting further analysis to determine if breakthrough technologies were demonstrated. The fact is, most of us know that, with Area 51 and some of the testimony that's come out of Area 51, that there are aspects of our government that know this information. Now, it's not like this big conspiracy where everybody knows. It's very compartmentalized. Very small numbers of people are familiar with this. And due to what's called compartmentalization, where people only know what they have to know, very few people have the big picture. And that's why it can be very difficult to break through and get an understanding of what's going on. So let's continue. UAP probably lack a single explanation. The UAP documented in this limited data set demonstrate an array of aerial behaviors, reinforcing the possibility there are multiple types of UAP requiring different explanations. Our analysis of the data supports the concept that if and when individual UAP incidents are resolved, they will fall into one of 5 potential explanatory categories: airborne clutter, natural atmospheric phenomena, U.S. government or industry developmental programs, foreign adversary systems, and a catch-all other bin. They already stated this. They're just restating this, and I'm not going to go over that again. The other is obviously UFOs, aliens, what have you. With the exception of the one instance where we determined with high confidence that we reported UAP was airborne clutter, specifically a deflating balloon, we currently lack sufficient information in our data set to attribute incidents to specific explanations. Here they talk about the difference. Airborne clutter, I'm not going to talk about that. Natural atmospheric phenomena, I'm not going to talk about that. U.S. government or industry developmental programs. Some UAP observations could be attributed to developments and classified programs by U.S. entities. We were unable to confirm, however, that these systems accounted for any of the UAP reports we collected. I can tell you right now, almost certainly, any videos that the government releases, like the Tic Tac video, I am convinced are almost certainly government vehicles, military vehicles. I think that that's why those are cleared for release. If it was actually something unknown, I don't think it would be released. That's my opinion based on decades of observing the way that our government and UFO phenomena interact. Foreign adversary systems. Some UAP may be technologies deployed by China, Russia, another nation, or a non-governmental entity. Never forget, it's not just China or Russia. There's, there could be groups of people who have gotten together and have access to this technology that we are not aware of. Let's leave it at that. The inevitable other. Although most of the UAP described in our data set probably remain unidentified due to limited data or challenges to collection processing or analysis, we may require additional scientific knowledge to successfully collect on, analyze, and characterize some of them. We would group such objects in this category pending scientific advances that allowed us to better understand them. The UAPTF intends to focus additional analysis on the small number of cases where UAP appeared to display unusual flight characteristics or signature management. UAP threatens flight safety and possibly national security. UAP pose a hazard to safety of flight and could pose a broader danger if some instances represent sophisticated collection against U.S. military activities by a foreign government, demonstrate a breakthrough aerospace technology by a potential adversary. Notice that, at no point do they talk about the potential of another species or some off-world power. Never even mentioned it in this entire report. I just want to point that out because it shows where they still are refusing to go, where the evidence obviously leads. So that tells you right there that, you know, this report isn't as open-minded and willing to go where the evidence should take it. Let's talk about ongoing airspace concerns. When aviators encounter safety hazards, they are required to report these concerns. Depending on the location, volume, and behavior of hazards during incursions on ranges, pilots may cease their tests and or training and land their aircraft, which has a deterrent effect on reporting. The UAPTF has 11 reports of documented instances in which pilots reported near misses with the UAP, where it almost hit them. Now they talk about potential national security challenges. We currently lack data to indicate any UAP are part of a foreign collection program or indicative of a major technological advancement by a potential adversary. We continue to monitor for evidence of such programs given the counterintelligence challenge they would pose, particularly as some UAP have been detected near military facilities or by aircraft carrying the U.S. government's most advanced sensor systems. Again, they're saying this isn't a foreign government, but they don't bring up the fact that it could potentially be an off-world species or aliens. Nothing about that. Well, you know, at some point they have to acknowledge that possibility. Explaining UAP will require analytic collection and resource investment. In line with the provisions of Senate Report 116-233 accompanying the IAA for FY 2021, UAPTF's long-term goal is to widen the scope of its work to include additional UAP events documented by a broader swath of U.S. government personnel and technical systems in its analysis. As the data set increases, UAPTF's ability to employ data analytics to detect trends will also improve. The initial focus will be to employ artificial intelligence, machine learning algorithms, to cluster and recognize similarities and patterns and features of the data points. As the database accumulates information from known aerial objects such as weather balloons, altitude or superpressure balloons, and wildlife, machine learning can add efficiency by pre-assessing UAP reports to see if those records match similar events already in the database. The UAPTF has begun to develop interagency analytical and processing workflows to ensure both collection and analysis will be well-informed and coordinated. Majority of UAP data is from U.S. Navy reporting. Now, again, I want to stop right there. The majority of UAP data is from U.S. Navy reporting. That points to what I stated before, that it appears that these things aren't coming from outer space, they're coming from the oceans. And it again suggests that they are in fact possibly not aliens, but some group or species that is living underneath our oceans. I'll continue here. But efforts are underway to standardize incident reporting across U.S. military services and other government agencies to ensure all relevant data is captured with respect to particular incidents and any U.S. activities that might be relevant. The UAPTF is currently working to acquire additional reporting, including from the U.S. Air Force, and has begun receiving data from the FAA. Although U.S. Air Force data collection has been limited historically, the U.S. Air Force began a 6-month pilot program in November 2020 to collect in the most likely areas to encounter a UAP and is evaluating how to normalize future collection, reporting, and analysis across the entire Air Force. The FAA captures data related to UAP during the normal course of managing air traffic operations. The FAA generally ingests this data when pilots and other aerospace users report unusual or unexpected events to the FAA's air traffic organization. Now, I want to talk about that real quick. Notice they don't talk about radar data. They only talk about, they ingest this data when pilots and other airspace users report unusual or unexpected events. What about radar data? Why? Because, as I stated earlier, they filtered this data out. FAA radar doesn't get this information. So if there's a UFO, a pilot sees it, he reports it, the FAA no longer sees it on the radar. That's why they don't include the radar in this report. In addition, the FAA continuously monitors its systems for anomalies, generating additional information that may be of use to the UAPTF. The FAA is able to isolate data of interest to UAPTF and make it available. The FAA has a robust and effective outreach program that can help the UAPTF reach members of the aviation community to highlight the importance of reporting UAP. Expand collection. The UAPTF is looking for novel ways to increase collection of UAP cluster areas when U.S. forces are not present as a way to baseline standard UAP activity and mitigate the collection bias in the data set. One proposal is to use advanced algorithms to search historical data captured and stored by radars. The UAPTF also plans to update its current interagency UAP collection strategy in order to bring to bear relevant collection platforms and methods from the DoD, Department of Defense, and the IC, the intelligence community. Increased investment in research and development. UAPTF has indicated that additional funding for research and development can further the future study of the topics laid out in this report. Such investments should be guided by a UAP collection strategy, UAP R&D technical roadmap, and a UAP program plan. That's it. Here they just have an appendix, and then the rest is footnotes. So thanks for listening. That report is pretty underwhelming, but again, it stands as a good way to analyze the UFO phenomenon and see the way the government interprets the data and how it tends to ignore certain interpretations of the data as well. Thanks everybody for watching. Like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. I have my PayPal down below if you want to tip me and help me out. It'd be much appreciated. Other than that, thanks for everything. We'll have another video up very soon. Bye-bye.